All right. We are live here, the Frogs War post-game show after a TCU Horned Frog victory on the road in Lubbock on Saturday night, 52-31 over Texas Tech. I am Amy Plunkett.
And I am Melissa Treebwasser.
And we are in a good mood, I think. Right, Melissa?
I would say I'm not in a bad mood.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, it's better than the last couple games.
Well, sure. Winning is infinitely better than losing almost every single time.
You absolutely love to see a win versus a loss. You're right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, starting from square one, TCU football got a victory tonight. They moved to 3-2 on the season. They moved to 1-1 in Big 12 play. That's a thing that happened tonight. There are obviously still significant weaknesses on this football team. We will start getting into those in just a few moments. For those of you that are already watching, shout out to you guys, the early risers. I appreciate all of you, every single one of you. Just so y'all know, if you are watching, this is live. If you have a comment, whether you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube or on Twitter, you can comment. We'll see those. We'll interact with those throughout the broadcast. We'll probably be on for the next 30 minutes or so, just chatting about TCU football. They did win tonight, 52-31. Zach Evans with 17 carries for 143 yards and 2 touchdowns. Kendre Miller with, I believe it was 15 carries for 185 yards and 3 touchdowns. And so we knew what we were getting with TCU's run defense coming in, or with run offense coming into this game, and they ran it to perfection, if you will, with over 300 rushing yards, an insane rush per yards per carry clip, a lot of rushing touchdowns on the ground. Obviously, it seems like TCU is really truly developing, Melissa, a 2-headed rushing monster in Zach Evans and Kendre Miller.
Yeah, and I think it's really exciting to see, Kendre really get an opportunity tonight. I know that we were all clamoring for more touches for Zach Evans, and that happened in the first half, and he had a great start. And then he was a little bit banged up, we found out after the game. And so to see Kendre come in and continue to kind of run through that Tech defense like a hot knife through butter, the way that Zach was doing was a great sign. We know in college football that one good running back normally isn't enough. And as much as we'd love to see Zach Evans get 30 carries a game, we know that's never going to happen under a Gary Patterson watch in these days. So was happy for Kendre. Was not a lot of defense put up against him, but he really announced himself, I think, on the big stage this evening with a massive, massive game when TCU really needed him to do just that.
I totally agree. Like you said, he had 17 carries in the first half, more than Zach Evans had 17 carries in the first half, more than he did in the entire game against Texas last week, which probably is frustrating to most Horned Frog fans. It's a little bit frustrating to me as well. And then, like you said, Kendre just absolutely dominating on the main stage, ESPN main channel. We all kind of, I think, knew as TCU fans what that guy had in his tank. But now the rest of the nation got to see it with touchdowns of 33, 45, and 75 yards. I tweeted this out earlier tonight, and I stand by it. We can have this debate if you'd like. I truly think that right now TCU has 2 of the best 4 running backs in the Big 12. The others that are in contention, obviously, Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall. You can talk about Kennedy Brooks as well. Maybe even Roschon Johnson. I think Texas has a really good 2-headed monster there. So at the very least, top 6. But I really think that at this point in the game, Kendre Miller for Roschon Johnson, yeah, I would take Kendre. Kendre Miller for Kennedy Brooks, I'd probably take Kendre at this point.
I think that we've seen Kennedy Brooks do it more against better competition more often. I think Kendre certainly can be that guy, and that he's not far from overtaking or usurping Kennedy Brooks in kind of the tier. But I want to see him get that opportunity consistently, and I want to see him do it against the defense, not like 11 guys that were on the field like we saw tonight. It's really hard. Again, I want to be really excited about what we saw. I want to be really excited about what Zach and Kendre did, because anytime that you're lining up against a conference opponent, it's not like you're playing just the dregs of college football, right? And so I don't want to take away from their performances, but also oh my God, that Tech defense is terrible.
Not great at all.
It is really bad, and it's injured, and so that makes it even worse. But they also, they weren't embarrassing on the road against West Virginia a week ago. So it's hard to take too much from this game one way or the other than just to be really excited about what TCU's offensive players did, especially in the running game, obviously, and to hope that they can carry that momentum again against an Oklahoma defense that also isn't good, but is light years better than the Red Raiders.
Yeah, I mean, Oklahoma's defense gave up, 41 points to Texas today in the Red River Shootout, but that's a rivalry game, and the defense in the second half looked much, much better than the defense in the first half for the Oklahoma Sooners as they came back from quite a few points down to actually come away with the win in that game. I agree with you, and I think that in a win like this, we start to ask ourselves some significant questions, especially when it comes to the offensive side of the ball. And we'll get to the defense in just a minute for everyone that's commenting on the defense in the comments. We see you.
And you are commenting. On
yes,
defense,
you are. And you are right to do so. But sticking to the offense for a few more moments here, in a game like this where you kind of come into the game knowing that you're the better team, which I feel like most TCU fans knew that they were the better team, regardless of what the outcome would be going in, you kind of felt that way. This would have been an opportunity, I think, for Meacham and for the offense and for Patterson to really start to experiment with some things and let Max try some things. They only threw the ball deep once, and Max connected with Darius Davis on a beautiful throw. They didn't really extend the passing game at all. I mean, Max only attempted 10 passes. He completed 8 of them for like a little bit over 100 yards and a touchdown. They ran the ball religiously today. They had the right to do that because it was working, even in spite of not having John Lands or Wes Harris starting today. You're missing both of your starting guards. You still run the football like that. Obviously, you take advantage of that. But like you said, Melissa, this isn't a good defense, and TCU is about to face some better defenses down the road. Why not stretch your legs a little bit and try some new things and test some new things and maybe build some confidence against a bad defense, so that when you're in a situation where you're running something that you need to convert on, you've done it before in game and you have that experience under your belt.
Well, and this is one of our biggest frustrations with Gary win by one Patterson, right? Is that he doesn't take these opportunities to work on things for his program. He wants the win and to get out of there and to stay healthy. And I respect that and appreciate that, but that doesn't work. We saw this against Kansas last year, as you pointed out before we went live. We saw this against Tech last year. When you know that you can run the football in a game that you are confident that you are going to win, stop running the football. Work on the passing game. We all knew that TCU was better going into this, but also I just want to point out that in our fun little group chat, I think Colin Post was the only one to actually pick TCU to win today. We were all pretty negative heading into tonight's kickoff.
My negativity really is just birthed from the fact that I've been alone with my children for 48 hours now while my wife is out of town. So
fair. But yeah, I think that it's really frustrating to see a quarterback that the complaints to this point has not developed to the point that we expected him to, is not improved in the passing game to the point that we expected him to. And then to take an opportunity against a bad Power 5 defense and not work on the passing game when you know that you're not going to be able to run for 400 yards against Oklahoma next week. I don't want to just win. I want to get better. And, one of the points that I brought up a couple different places is how many guys on this TCU roster can you point to that from week 1 to week 5, 6 have gotten better? And how many of those guys from a year ago have gotten better, especially when you look at the skill positions? And I understand that you don't have Quentin Johnson and you're missing a couple of offensive linemen. And so maybe the thought process was, we don't want to get Max killed and we don't need to get him killed. So, but at the same time, are you playing to win a game or are you playing to compete for a conference championship? And right now it looks like TCU is playing to win games. And maybe that's where this team is this year, but that's not where we all expected to be coming into 2021. So I guess it's a little bit frustrating to that degree.
Yeah, I can understand the frustration too. If you're not growing, what are you doing? If you're not learning or experimenting or trying new things and an opportunity to do so, what are you doing? Playing to win isn't bad, right? Winning football is not bad. And that's not what we're saying here. If you're listening and asking, what the hell are they talking about after a TCU three touchdown victory? It's the fact that consistently, time and time again, we see the opportunity to grow shrugged off in favor of, to use a soccer term, as I'm, a lifelong soccer fan,
for a year, but it's
parking the bus.
Yeah.
Right? You have a late lead, pull back, go uber conservative, and do whatever you can to just not lose the game. And that is the decision time and time again when TCU has a lead in the second half, when the alternative could be run them out of the freaking building and learn something in the process. If you make a few mistakes, hey, you've got the leeway to make a few mistakes. You're up by 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns, whatever it is. But that's never the decision that's made. It's always the conservative, we're playing to not lose from this point on, rather than we're playing to win convincingly.
Well, and I wonder if that's kind of a hangover from the days in the Mountain West, because you would get up for a game against a Utah or BYU, and then you knew that New Mexico was on the other side, or UTEP, or whoever it was through all the years. And so it was kind of like you really could take 1 week at a time. I don't feel like in the Big 12 conference you can do that. You're constantly building towards who's the next Goliath that we have to try to take down, if you still think of yourselves as David, which I think a lot of TCU fans still do. And again, I know obviously after losing 2 straight games and the way that we lost 2 straight games, that just getting the win was super, super important. And I was kind of bouncing between the radio and the broadcast for most of the first half. And Landry Burdine, the great sideline reporter for TCU, talked about how Patterson wanted to get back to having fun and told his players we need to get back to having fun. Well, you can do that when you're playing Texas Tech. But what are we thinking about? You don't want to look ahead to Oklahoma going into tonight's game, but at the same time, if you're the coaching staff, you've got to be thinking, how do we beat Oklahoma? How do we beat Iowa State? How do we beat Baylor, who all of a sudden looks super, super competent? You can't just be taking the wins as they come, because if that's all you're playing for, you're going to struggle to get to bowl eligibility this season. So, and Brandon, thank you for saying you wish Gary would listen to us. We also wish Gary would listen to us. We also know that he doesn't want to listen to us. So
here's the thing. Gary listens to everyone.
Yeah, that's true.
As in, he hears what everyone says. He hears
everyone. He
does not reads listen. Everything that's out there, and he consumes all of the content. And then we hear about it on Tuesdays in his press conference or on his Twitter account and that kind of thing. But that's neither here nor there. Let's shift though, Melissa, and let's talk about the defensive side of the ball tonight, because this is the 4th game in a row that TCU has given up more than 30 points. This is the 3rd game in a stretch where the run defense has been particularly abysmal. They've given up 836 rushing yards and 8 rushing touchdowns in the last 3 games against SMU, Texas, and tonight against Texas Tech on 136 carries, which tallies out to just a little bit over 6 yards a carry over the last 3 games. They have to get this figured out, because regardless of the running backs that are coming down the pipe, you cannot have a defense that allows 6 yards per carry on the ground and expect to win many games in the Big 12.
Those are numbers that TCU used to give up in a season. I mean, there are seasons where they haven't allowed 8 rushing touchdowns, and maybe you have to go back to the CUSA for that. But I know that there was a time when you didn't do that in 12 games against the Gary Patterson.
Well, in 2014, I don't think they gave up hardly
probably not. That. Yeah, and so it's incredibly concerning. And I think a lot of times we get caught in this trap of, well, Corey Bethley's out. Well, you know what? Corey Bethley is a senior, and Corey Bethley missed 2/3 of the season last year, and Corey Bethley's going to be gone at the end of this year. If that's the reason, and it's the same thing on the offensive side of the ball, if 1 or 2 players are the reason that you look that incompetent, something's wrong there. We're either not developing the second stringer. I mean, we saw this with Penn State today, right? Their starting quarterback goes out, and you've got the JV quarterback coming in as the backup. If you aren't preparing for injuries, if you're not developing depth, what are you doing in college football? Not everyone's going to get to be Alabama, but it's got to be better than that. And when you've brought in, for years and years, we have been told that this group of defensive linemen was elite, and they look elite on paper. Why can't they overcome 1 or 2 injuries and still be exceptional against the run? There's no reason to be this bad against the run game. I honestly don't understand what's going on.
Well, the thing too, and this I think the argument that you're making has played out with other teams in the Big 12 so far this year, and we've seen really good results, right? Texas started Hudson Card at quarterback this year. He got benched in the middle of the Arkansas game, and Casey Thompson has looked really good ever since. They lost today. That wasn't necessarily Casey Thompson's fault as much as it was Texas's rush defense. The same thing can be said for Oklahoma today. They benched Spencer Rattler, and Caleb Williams comes in and absolutely lights the world on fire, and that's two backup quarterbacks. We've seen, last year for the first half of the Iowa State game, TCU's backup quarterback situation. We've seen now backup cornerbacks and how they've played for TCU. We've seen backup defensive tackles and how they've played for TCU. I think the depth at wide receiver and running back has prevented us from seeing similar results at the skill positions there. But TCU was without Carter Ware tonight, and we didn't even use an H-back, but twice, and so there's definitely, I totally agree that there are some depth concerns on both sides of the ball, and it's playing out on defense to the negative in very visible ways right now.
Well, and the thing that I would say too is of all of the defensive positions and all of the things that you're asked to do on either side of the ball, isn't the easiest one to execute stopping the run? It's not, and it's not like they're doing a bunch of trick plays or a bunch of cutback blocks or the guards are pulling. I mean, this is just teams just attacking the gaps, attacking the A gap. Just there's no real reason that these guys should be this bad against the run unless they're just this bad, and I don't want to sit there and pile on 22-year-old kids, but at the end of the day, from what I understand about football, and I'm not, a football genius here. I don't understand every bit of every scheme, but that stopping the run is understanding your assignment and executing it. It's not like this is some super complicated thing against, Aaron, you're 100% right. We can touch on that a little bit, but yeah, it's just do your job. Just know your assignment and do your job. And if we aren't capable of executing that against and listen, Roderick Thompson's a really solid running back, but this is not a guy that should have had the gaps that he had and had the game that he had tonight.
Yeah. This is not the team that should run for 250 yards against you. I can understand it to an extent if it's Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson. I can understand it to an extent if it's Breece Hall or if it's Kennedy Brooks. But this is not the team that should run for 250 yards, and that's exactly what Texas Tech did tonight. SMU should not run for 275 yards against you, or 350 yards against you.
Well,
or whatever it was.
Texas Tech ran for 250 yards in this game, in a game that they were down by 3 scores for the majority of the night. They should not have kept running the ball, but they did because they knew that they could. They were making more progress in their run game than they were in their pass game half the time. And when a team gets down 3 scores, they should not want to run the ball. And when you look at TCU and go, we're going to pick up 6 to 8 yards a pop, you can keep running the ball down 3 scores. That's embarrassing.
Here's the thing, too. It's not like Henry Colombi had a particularly bad game for Texas Tech. He threw for 344 yards.
Did he really?
Yeah. He completed 23 of 41 passes for 344 yards. I'm looking at the stats right now. He didn't throw a touchdown. He did throw that tipped pass that ended up being intercepted by Hodges Tomlinson that was returned for a touchdown. But he did what he wanted to do through the air tonight. For the most part, other than throw a touchdown when he needed to throw.
Good God, we gave up almost 600 yards again.
TCU got outgained tonight. TCU had 498 yards of offense. Texas Tech had 558. In a 3-touchdown win for TCU, they got outgained by 60 yards.
I almost want to apologize to our friends, frenemies at Viva the Matadors. I'm not going to. But I almost want to apologize to them because we did get in a little bit of an argument over who you'd rather have, Henry Colombi or Max Duggan. I still think I'd rather have Max Duggan, but I'll tell you, nobody puts up garbage time stats like Henry Colombi. That dude, he is so elite at having numbers that make you go, wait, what? That is a wait, what? Night from Henry Colombi to the extreme. So I still think I'd rather have Max. Yeah, I still think I'd rather have Max. But wow, it's
pretty wild. It's pretty wild what this defense is giving up. And we got some really bad news after the game tonight as well. Bud Clark, starting safety for the Frogs. Gary is afraid that he has suffered a season-ending injury and is probably done for the year. That's disappointing in a year where you're already trying to replace two safeties who have gone to the NFL. Now you're down a starter. Nook Bradford looked pretty good tonight.
Mm-hmm.
TJ Carter had some big hits tonight. I saw someone in the comments talking about TJ Carter earlier. He also had some pretty significant missed tackles.
Yeah.
And now Deshaun McQuinn was already out, another guy who's one of the more experienced safeties on this roster. And so now you're starting to really be concerned, if you're a TCU fan, about depth at safety and at corner. And how is this secondary going to hold up throughout the rest of the year? I wonder too if some of the run defense issues are starting in the secondary for TCU, because normally, Gary in his 4-2-5 loves to bring that strong safety, that LaKendrick Van Zant, that Trayvon Merrick, that Derek Kindred style guy, and bring them up closer to the line and let them be that third linebacker, essentially that hybrid safety linebacker. I wonder if he's concerned about doing that this year, and he's putting that strong safety in coverage more to cover for the deficiencies of CJ Caesar and just the general newness of the other two safeties, because the most experienced safety out there is LaKendrick Van Zant, and he's ideally going to be used against the run.
Well, we learned a lot about what Gary Patterson thinks about this TCU secondary when he moved Travius Hodges-Tomlinson to safety last week.
Yeah.
And did so for communication purposes, is what he said. And the thing that I struggle with is that you've got guys back there, and LaKendrick Van Zant, Nook Bradford, Josh Foster, who have all played a lot of football at TCU. These are not freshmen. Now, maybe they're first-year starters or have only started a handful of games. But to have played as much as those guys have played and not be able to tighten up the communication to the point that you have to put your best corner in the secondary just to talk, I don't know. And again, maybe this is the scheme is too difficult for the players, or doesn't fit the players, or Patterson is stubbornly trying to do what he's always done, or he just the football IQ on the back end maybe isn't quite as developed as we need it to be. But there are definitely issues going on in that unit, and losing players weekly is not going to make things better. Bud Clark, whom I love and has been my defensive player crush this season, has not been good. I hate to say it, but he has really, really struggled. And so from strictly a on the field performance, you look and say, well, maybe this isn't a huge difference maker. But again, when you look at the depth and the way that these guys have failed to gel and kind of figure it out as a team back there, losing a guy who has at least been someone you could count on is definitely concerning.
It is concerning. And at the same time, Clark is a sophomore. McQuinn is a sophomore. Bradford is a junior. Van Zant, I think, is a senior. And all of the depth behind those four guys are sophomores and freshmen. It's super young in the secondary. And we know, just like you said, that this is a complicated defense to learn, especially at the safety position. And so I really do think that the learning curve is catching up right now. Eventually, 7 games down the road at the end of the season, I would love to revisit this conversation and see how those guys have developed and grown over the course of the second half of this season. I don't think it's going to get to where we're accustomed to seeing TCU secondary by the end of this year. But we've had seasons like this in the past where the secondary has been a little bit down. We've seen guys give up big plays pretty routinely. And then the next year, those same guys have a bounce back season.
Sure. But here's my other part of that conversation is that this has happened now the last 4 seasons, and that it's taken us 4, 5, 6 games to kind of get our feet under us, so to speak, on the defensive side of the ball. Each of those last 4 years, the team has finished really strong and had some great wins down the stretch. But here's my question. If you're doing this 4 years in a row, why are these guys not developing? Why aren't they sticking around? And so you can say, yeah, we lost Trayvon Merrick and Ardarius Washington, and those guys ended up we knew they'd be tough to replace. I don't think personally I thought it would be this bad. But why for 4 years in a row now has it taken half the season to kind of get the engine rolling? There's an issue there. And I don't know if it's transfer portal, I don't know if it's recruiting, I don't know if it's development, but something just hasn't kind of gotten in sync the last several seasons for TCU football, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I agree. And you can look on the offensive side and say the same thing about or not the same thing about Zach, the same thing about Max.
Perfect. Don't talk about
Zach Evans is a perfect, beautiful human being, and I wish he would rush 50 times a game for us this year and next, and then go dominate the NFL and have a Hall of Fame career.
And always wear those ponytails, Zach, and always wear those glittery, sparkly barrettes. I loved everything about the whole look tonight, and I was so happy watching him.
Yes, absolutely. He's perfect and can do no wrong, even if he gets a celebration penalty for a really nice coordinated dance in the end zone.
Beautiful.
Max, though, hasn't grown. And some of that is on Max, and he's acknowledged that at the end of last year. He acknowledged it. He acknowledged it in Big 12 media days before the season started. He's acknowledged it as the season has gotten on. He knows the deficiencies in his game. So at some point, you start to talk about just general limitations of a player. On the other end of that, or I guess on the other side of that coin, though, is also how are the coaches creating a system that plays to the strength of their talent? We had this same conversation, Melissa, in 2016 and 2017 with Kenny Hill, because Kenny Hill transferred from Texas A&M, and the coaching staff tried to plug him in to the same offense that was so successful under Trayvon Boykin. And Kenny Hill isn't Trayvon Boykin. He doesn't have the same arm strength. He doesn't have the same just kind of general feel in the pocket. And so we saw the deficiencies of his game in a real significant way in 2016. And then in 2017, the offense shifted and adjusted. And TCU went 11-3, had that great comeback win over Stanford in the Alamo Bowl, finished ranked in the top 10. And Kenny Hill was excellent because they designed an offense that played to his strengths. We're in year 3 of these offensive coaches not creating a game plan that plays to Max Duggan's strengths. And so at some point it stops being on the player, I think, and it starts being on the coaches to say, what this guy is capable of, craft an offense that allows him to be successful. You have a stellar running game, and we saw that again on display tonight. But that running game isn't always going to run for 350, 375 yards. At some point, you're going to have to throw the football. Figure out a game plan that allows Max to throw the football to areas of the field where he's had success. 8 to 15 yards downfield, a little bit deeper over the middle. We know that he's capable of making those throws. Those are the throws he makes with the most confidence. And we still, time and time again, do not see them game planning to Max's strength.
Well, and you've recruited these outstanding wide receivers. The talent is there. Again, put them in positions to succeed. You've got guys like Tay Barber and Darius Davis who have played really, really well and utilizing those short to intermediate routes. You've got guys like Blair Conright who can make guys miss. And you've got these big targets that just run comebacks and curls with Savion Williams and Quentin Johnston. Just like get them in matchups and let them body guys and play basketball out there. And then you also have brought in these tight end, H-back type guys that we forget are on the roster. Like Carter Ware was out. I understand that. Like, so we don't use him. But oh my God, all we heard about was what a special talent DeAndre Rogers could be, and what how great George Carius Spivey was looking in fall camp. And what have we heard from those guys since? Like, why would you not use the tight end with a quarterback who really excels at throwing the ball in the middle of the field? It just like, again, I'm not trying to sit here and act like I'm an offensive playbook savant. But even the casual football fan or someone who spends a little bit of time watching football can look and say, like, why do we keep square pegging these round holes when we were with TCU when you have the talent and you keep making that talent look worse on a regular basis? No, we are not. No. Aaron, I was on your team before. No.
Oh, yeah.
I would rather go 0-12 for the next 10 years than hire somebody with that stink on him.
Anybody but tape fingers. Anybody but he's still got the tape on his fingers, by the way. He's still rocking that look. Saw it today as Arkansas lost by points at Ole Miss.
Yeah. Also, that hire looked really, really good for a couple of weeks, and now doesn't look so good again. Okay, thank you, Aaron. Thank you.
Look, if you guys are watching and if you've hung out to this point, if you have any questions or thoughts, make sure that you're making comments. We want to respond to those. If you have questions, I'll definitely throw those up in the next few minutes, and Melissa and I can kick those back and forth. But there were only 2 other Big 12 games that happened today with the following schools: Iowa State, Kansas, Kansas State, and Oklahoma State, all on bye weeks this week. You had West Virginia traveling to Waco to play Baylor, and you had the Red River Shootout in Dallas between Oklahoma and Texas. Melissa, tell me a little bit about what you saw in that Oklahoma UT game, other than both fan bases chanting SEC during College Game Day this morning.
Also, both fan bases calling for Caleb Williams, and it working out better for one side than the other, right? I mean, that the amount of Texas fans that were tweeting and calling for the backup quarterback only to see him come in and absolutely pummel the Longhorns. I think it was. I usually hate watching that game because it's really hard to watch a game and like want both teams to lose and know that one of them has to win. It's super frustrating as a fan. But I think that Oklahoma looks scary with the infusion of excitement and talent around their freshman QB. He's still a freshman, and so you hope that Gary Patterson's defense will be ready to face him. But Kennedy Brooks, I thought, was absolutely outstanding. The Oklahoma defense looked like it couldn't stop even the TCU passing game in the first half. But in the second half, when they needed to, they made great adjustments, and Alex Grinch had things rolling, and they really made life difficult for Bijan Robinson and Texas in the second half. And again, like, that's just like, I hate to admit it, but when that game is played like that, it is damn fun. And that was I really only paid attention in the second half. I watched a lot of West Virginia Baylor in the early slot, but like that fourth quarter of that football game was freaking blast. And I want to say too, like, Xavier Worthy, like, for a true freshman to make that huge mistake and have that ball ripped out of his hands and to be the go and then to come back and make 2 huge plays, like, that's the kind of thing you absolutely love about college football. Even if he is a Longhorn, like, screw him, hate him, everything about him. But it was really fun to watch that kid kind of get that immediate redemption. It was a fun, entertaining game, and I am scared to death to go to Norman and face this reinvigorated Oklahoma offense. They look like a lot better team than they did coming into today.
And it's a night game, right? 6:30 under the lights. It feels like TCU always gets the night game lineup against Oklahoma. I don't know what that means. If it's like this is a winnable game for OU, we want to showcase them in prime time so that they get a little boost in the polls the next day or whatever it might be. But I just hope that TCU makes life hell for Oklahoma. And we Saturday night in Norman.
Yeah, we've played them tough in Norman. And this is definitely not the strongest Oklahoma team that we've seen, but they just looked a lot better this morning once they made the change at QB. So it's a little bit concerning to kind of think about what next week might be like.
Yeah, I totally agree. The other game, Baylor thumped West Virginia in Waco, and what a couple people were saying, maybe West Virginia could come in and do something. But like you said a couple times already tonight, Baylor looks competent, and Jerry Bohannon looks really good.
Yeah, I do want to also point out, just for those of you guys watching live, that Alabama just took the lead over A&M. And so if you feel, if it starts raining, those are just tears from College Station. Don't worry about it. But Baylor. So Baylor's such a weird team because, and we have had this conversation with our friend Parker Stats of War quite a few times, but this is a team that completely and totally understands who their quarterback is and just continually puts him in a position to maximize his abilities and hide his deficiencies. And so they're not a super elite team, especially on the offensive side of the ball. But my God, are they disciplined, and they are well coached, and they are well schemed, and that defense is really, really tough. And their offensive line is really exceptional. So I feel a lot better about the West Virginia game. Probably the last regular season game I get to attend in person. I'm a little more excited about that one than I was, but I am a lot more terrified of that Baylor game than I was a couple weeks ago. That's a team that every single week looks a little bit better. And as much as I hate Baylor with my whole heart and passion, like, if they weren't Baylor, if you put any other uniform, that's a team that would be really, really fun to watch play football. Like, they just do a lot of things really, really well. And I hate myself, and I've got to throw up just real quick. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I'm not ever going to say anything nice about Baylor on a medium where people can record
Yeah,
it. So
I know.
Baylor
I hate
sucks and I
myself.
hate them and they're awful, and TCU's going to win by 40. That's all I have to say about that. But I think that's just going to do it for this post-game recap of TCU's 52-31 victory over Texas Tech. Folks, you can look forward to these after every TCU away game. Melissa and I will be online chatting about TCU win or lose. The home games are a little bit more difficult, obviously, because we're both at the game, we're covering the game and that kind of thing. Maybe we can do it a little bit later if it's an earlier game. I don't want to start these things at like 11 o'clock at night. That's not good for anybody. But thank you for being here. Thank you for your comments. We will see you the next time TCU has a road game, which is next Saturday night. So I am Jamie Plunkett.
I'm Melissa Trebwasser.
Go Frogs.
Go Frogs.